Welcome to another edition of Sober Not Sane. I'm Jub Fink. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Sober Not Sane. Subscribe, like, watch, send us a note on YouTube. Listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcast. You can find me I don't think there's any other Jub Finks. Just put my name in. Before we start, big thank you to Liz from the Camera Store for helping us out with the equipment. It means the world to us. Thank you so much. Very special guest tonight. This is Curtis Boudreau, who is with Smart Recovery. You're on the board.
Yeah.
And I thought of you because it is a group that I attended and that actually worked really, really well for me. And you know what? I thought about something when I stopped going is I should have called you.
Okay.
And said, hey, I'm actually okay.
Okay. Yeah. I don't get a lot of updates from people. It'd be nice to get some.
Well, yeah, because I'm sure as many people go on successfully as go on and are not at that point in time. So
Right.
It would be good for you to know.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get some confirmation.
Yeah. And Smart Recovery is a little bit different. Everybody on the planet thinks AA. Kind of what's the philosophy with Smart Recovery?
SMART is a cognitive-based program, cognitive therapy. It's based on rational emotive behavior therapy, which is a type of cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's got tools and techniques. First one is to deal with is to get a balanced life. Second one is to deal with the urges and cravings. Third point is to have a balanced life. One is building and maintaining, dealing with urges, problem solving, and a balanced life. So that's
Right.
the 4 points.
So I'll tell you what I liked about it was okay, if you're feeling like this, do this. There were actually like workbooks.
Yeah.
There was work to be done and not some ethereal, like, it'll all be okay. Well, it hasn't for 43 years. I don't know how this is going to change.
Right.
What was your journey that brought you to Smart Recovery?
Well, in June of 1995, I was severely brain injured with a broken neck and punctured lung, and I lost my spleen. It was an awful accident, severely brain injured. And then, they sort of told me I would never work again, and I just lived with the FU attitude for the next 25 years. I'm like, I'm gonna have a career. You just watch me, right?
Yeah.
And so 2005 in April, I cleaned up. I started coming to Smart right away, and January 2006, I took over. I had the program basically dumped on me. Everybody disappeared because I put my foot down.
Right.
And I said, it's clean. We got to be clean to get some credit, right? To get some respect for the program. But the people then had sort of taken it to the extreme where it's my self-management is to slip on a regular basis. And I sort of said, no. I said, that's not right.
Yeah.
And I said, how are you doing, buddy? And he said, oh, I have my slips. And I said, so you haven't quit yet.
Yeah.
So the whole team quit. They left. And I was dumped. 6 months clean, January 2006. And I thought, with urges and cravings early on in recovery, I said, if I'm going to obsess about something, because the phone line wasn't being answered properly, the meetings were having facilitators not show up. So I said, if I'm going to obsess about something, I'm going to make it my recovery. And then, honestly, like for the next 13 years and 3 months, I answered the phone 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And
wow.
Even with my brother got married in Mexico, and I ended up with a $750 phone bill.
Wow.
And I've been called at Christmas dinners. I've been called at Easter dinners. And my cousin always said, talk them off the ledge, right? So I didn't do one-on-one therapy with them, or I'm not a therapist anyways. But what I would do is try and set them up to get to the meeting, sort of talk them down from their crazy spot.
Right.
But, man, that burns you out after 13 years.
It's a lot to take on. Like a lot. You know what? I don't know. I couldn't do that.
Well, when I was first in the SMART meetings in 2005, I had this crazy thought in my head that we should have 7 meetings a week. So we should have 7 meetings a week. We need to be a registered charity, and I need to be the executive director of that charity. So that was my goal from 2006. We are now registered as a charity. There's meetings going on in about 9 different cities in Alberta now. But back in January 2006, it was me in one room running 3 meetings. And then, so we've grown a little bit since then. And I'm very happy to have started, had a role in a charity.
Oh, well, and it's funny because it's not by no means a knock on AA, but it's a program. You were saying that it's almost the difference between being left-brained or right-brained.
Yes. With my brain injury, I was severely right-brained injured and frontal lobe, which is the prefrontal cortex. So that was damaged bad. I didn't have any capacity for spirit, so SMART actually saved my life, I think, right? I got there and I was like, thank goodness. And then over my recovery time, I started attending the 12-step meetings.
Right.
And I do 12-step on Saturday. Actually, it was quite a ride, Jeb. I was part of the activities committee and I chaired it for 7 years. 5 of the 7 years I was on it, and I was running the meeting, being the treasurer, being the group service representative, the church liaison, and running SMART.
Wow.
And so, I obsessed about recovery.
Yeah.
The cool thing is you get 13 years clean doing that.
Well, if we're nothing else, we are obsessive. So, and you know what I used to say all the time, why am I not, addicted to or obsessed with going to the gym or eating well? And I don't know what the difference is, but what I really liked about the program was that there were you worked through worksheets.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't remember, and I don't know if you would remember, that the hardest time that I had was basically you had a sheet that was divided down the middle.
Okay.
And it basically said positive things about your addiction
Yep.
and negative things.
Our cost-benefit analysis, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm looking at it going, there was nothing good about, it was blank. Like the good side was just blank. And I think finally you said to me, well, didn't you say you did this for 43 years? You must have been getting something.
Get something out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we look at the pros of using, the cons of using, and we have to recognize there's reasons why we do what we do, right? Whether it be the high or escape or numbing or something, people just don't use for nothing. We look at the pros of using, the cons of using, and you'll find that the pros are all short-term crap. And the cons are the long-term pain, and then the pros of being clean are going to be very long-term, but the short-term part of being clean is doing the daily maintenance. And I like to promote 30 minutes to 3 hours a day. If I do 30 minutes to 3 hours a day, I get my recovery. And that could be get ready, head to the meeting, attend the meeting, visit after the meeting, get home from the meeting. I've sort of invested 3 hours in my recovery, but I don't do the recovery thing 24 hours a day. That's just too much, right? But my social activity is still Narcotics Anonymous. And I'm on the board with the Smart Recovery Alberta. And I have a job with a foundation that's got 2 treatment centers out east, and I get to do their family and friends program for them. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, it's like my dream job. I got it. It was quite a ride. Over a 5-year period, 13 years happened, but I've lost my little brother to suicide. I had a physical and emotional and spiritual burnout. And I think it was October of last year, I sort of hit bottom, but I came back into recovery because I had taken a couple years off after leaving Smart,
Okay.
after that position had ended. And December 31st, I said, I'm going to start the new year off of 2021 good, and I'm going to make the phone call. So I called Peter at Sobriety Home Foundation out east, and I said, I want to work for you. And he said, good. What do you? And but before that, I did that. I had to be very honest. I said, how much would a 20-hour work week be good for you, Curtis? And just because of the injury and exhaustion and stuff like that, it's like, dude, what would work best is a 20-hour work month. So I get to bill them for 5 hours a week. I put in about 8 hours a week of time.
Right.
We have a meet. Yeah. It's for the family and friends of people who are battling addiction. We have the family and friends program, which I actually had to become part of and start facilitating those meetings. But you had asked about the spirit versus the cognitive. The spirit is that right brain stuff, and the cognitive is that left brain stuff. And then I get like my whole brain working on recovery.
Right.
Now, there was a period of time where I was only going to one meeting a week, and I wasn't very satisfied. I was a little anxious, and I have found now that with doing Wednesday night meeting, Wednesday night I'm the family and friends facilitator. Thursday night I'm the resident tool expert at the alumni meeting for their meetings, and then Saturday is my NA meeting. I mean, I feel like I have a balanced life, right? And I did celebrate 16 years clean in May.
That's amazing. You
Thank
know,
you.
It's funny because I have people, I'm coming up to 6, and people, they say, well, you must be okay now.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. And that's sort of where the name Sober Not Sane. Like, I know people are like, well, you could have like one or two. I'm like, no. I've never thought of having one of anything.
Yeah.
One M&M, one candy bar, one piece of toast, I think one of my issues was I couldn't get into the spiritual thing at all. I mean, my mom forced me to go to church and stuff, and so it bothered me more than anything, and I found that aspect triggering. Where a smart recovery was more like taking a course on how to do this. It's
the nuts and bolts of abstinence and then recovery, right? We got tools to use, and that's what I love is the tools, and I call it, I love the smart recovery, self-management, and recovery training. And we train. And the reason we train, like my little brother that I lost was a U.S. Marine. They don't send him into war without a lot of training.
Right.
Because when Ryan was in battle, he didn't think, he performed. And that's what I did with my smart recovery training is when life hit me, I survived, right?
Stop thinking.
You just
do what you're supposed to do.
Do what you're supposed to do. Yeah. So, and it was, and so self-management, recovery, training is what I like to say. And life's going to happen, right? And when it happens, when it happens for me, I've got tools. There's the cost-benefit analysis, disarm techniques to get rid of urges. There's a method of problem solving, and there's lifestyle balance as well, right? So those are the 4 points of SMART. And it's been. Then I wanted more from, as we want, as battling addiction is more. I started hanging out at the NA meetings, and then I became a big part of that group as well. So it's been quite a ride in the past 16 and a half years. But so the job, I think I put about 8 hours a week into work now, and I finally have a balanced life.
That's great.
It's the first time.
So what I actually, and I don't know if we ever talked about it before, but I ended up going to Betty Ford.
Okay.
Which, whether it's truly the greatest place on earth to go get sober, or if I was ready, I suspect I was ready.
I was ready, yeah.
And they had the tools to help. But I literally hit there thinking I was insane.
Okay.
And it was just like, they're going, no, you don't think like other people, but you're not per se insane.
Right.
So did you ever feel like that? Like,
and, you know, I've actually felt like that periods of time in recovery as well. It's just sort of like, this is difficult, this is hard. So with the tools that I got, the self-management, we have an ABC method of problem solving, which allowed, I guess I'll go back to we don't tell people what to believe at SMART. We try and review the existing belief systems that we have,
right,
and find out where that disconnect is. So there's a disconnect in my whole belief system, which is the reason for using in the first place, whether it was trauma or pain or something. There's a reasons why we use. There was lots of times, but I knew all I had to do anytime in my recovery job was say, don't take the first one. And as long as I didn't take that first one, because I've seen people come and go, and like you said, who wants to have one? Have I ever had one of anything? No.
Yeah.
Like, why would I want to have one drink? It's what a waste of time, right? I'll just stick with my I drink Coca-Cola, I drink coffee, and I drink water and energy drinks and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I don't want that alcohol stuff. I actually have quite a resentment against it now. So
I'm at the point I was thinking about this when I was getting ready to come down here. And I used to always say, you know what, I miss a really good glass of wine with a meal. And then I thought, you know, I'd be willing to bet if I had a glass of wine, it would taste horrible by this point, after not having it for so long.
Well, I have a gentleman, he's 6 months clean, and he went to a hotel. One of the members of my family and friends meeting is actually sober as well, but he had his one beer and his one glass of wine, and he got a massive headache, and he hated it. So, and I'm not like a connoisseur of flavors of alcohol. I wanted the effect, right?
Right.
Absolutely, right? And like you said, 6 years clean, people are like, you still do that recovery thing?
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Yeah. I still do that recovery thing, and it's my maintenance that I do. And we go through the stages of change at Smart Recovery. We're pre-contemplation, that's active addiction, not even thinking of cleaning up.
Yeah.
And then we have contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and quote exit. But we got the whole process for this, which I really love, right?
Well, one of the things that struck me too, and I just as we're talking about it, was I couldn't tell you. I still have all the paperwork.
Yeah.
But it was about we were setting goals. So, and then the next week came in. Okay, how'd you do on your goal? And your question was, what did you do to get closer to your goal? And I'd done nothing. And you said, well, it must not be a very important goal.
Right.
So it is Smart Recovery's about doing the work.
Yes, yeah. And I like to say for a lot of times, anybody who we have a handbook which we're based on, the family and friends actually have their own handbook as well.
Nice.
But the Smart Recovery Handbook is an actual exercise book. There's exercise sheets. And I guarantee that anybody who starts at the beginning of a handbook is honest, gets to the end of the handbook, is making better decisions. Because it's those bad decisions that...
Do you think it's something that, like with the handbooks, if you went through it for almost anything, just in your general life?
Oh, yes, totally, because this starts off as addiction training, but these are life skills. And I had to give myself some forgiveness because I couldn't beat myself up for not knowing something that I hadn't been taught yet. But now that I've been taught these tools, I have an ability to deal with life without chemicals, right? And that was that's all I wanted, right? So
Well, I think for me the issue was I didn't want to deal with life, hence the chemicals.
Escape, yes.
Yeah, just you end up not caring about anything.
No, you don't. Yeah. So, and with my brain injury, it was it was a disaster for. I think I got a settlement in 1998, 99, and then from 1998 to 2005, I just hit bottom, right? And that's what I like to say to people. It's like different people, different places, different things, different activities, but at the end of the day, it's addiction, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I hit bottom in April of 2005, and I have recovery today. So
That's great.
well, thank you.
And it's smart isn't just based on, I mean, I met people in there that were there for all sorts of things. It wasn't necessarily alcohol and drugs. There were
Right.
other addictions but it was funny to me because people would tell me kind of quietly on the side, well, I don't actually drink. This is what I do. And it was like, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. No, different characters, different substances, different activities. We recognize it's smart. It's addiction.
Yeah.
And at when I was running the meetings, what I love to say is just the term of using and clean.
Yeah.
So whatever using means, food, sex, drugs, gambling, cutting, that's their using, and clean is obviously not doing that, and get better at that. So yeah, the cutting is wow, that was an addiction that I didn't understand until I started doing this job. Is their pain is so deep that that's the only way they get an escape. So
Right.
I was like, wow. So I learned a lot about addiction, but most of all, I don't know all the scientific stuff about addiction, but I do know quite a bit about my recovery today,
Right.
and that's what SMART gave me, right?
Well, and you know what? I kind of did this shotgun approach where, I mean, I did courses at ADAC. I did all like everything. I went to AA, went to NA, I went to CA.
Yep.
Like I've hit them all. And I think in my head, I thought, I'm smarter than everyone else. I'll take all of their information, take the parts that I like, and create my own sobriety.
That is the basis of smart recovery, is to get out there into the world, explore everything that's available, take what works for me, and then I've got my recovery. And the word I don't like are facilitators using or anything like that is shoulds.
Yes.
Because if somebody tells me I should do something, it implies, one, they don't think what I'm doing is correct, and they're judging me. So we like to use I statements at the meetings, but those shoulds, but at the end of the day,
It throws a block up. If I said, Curtis, you should do this, immediately you're thinking,
the back gets up.
who the hell are you to tell me what to do?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we don't should on people, and like there was a saying that you should all over yourself, but should. So what we do is a lot of I language in the meetings,
Right.
like I statements or I feel, or what works for me. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, we don't tell people what they have to do, and we don't tell people what they have to believe, right? And that's because that's sort of when I go to NA, that's sort of the foundation for the 12-step program is believing in a higher power. But for some people, it doesn't quite work for them. So that's where SMART could be a definite answer for them. And for me, I went out there and I did ADAC as well, which is now Alberta Health Services, Mental Health and Addictions. I did NA, I did SMART Recovery. I was a psychologist. I had a physician. I've got a physician. I have to take medications, so I work with a physician and a pharmacist and a counselor. So that was sort of the
The ball of support.
yeah. So it's not just one thing.
Yeah.
If I only had one thing, if I only had SMART, if I just had NA, I don't think I'd be clean today. Because there's different it's sort of like I can explain, like a journeyman cabinet maker. They're going to have 150 tools, but they might use 2 a day. But when those 148 tools are needed for that specific thing, it's going to be
They've got them.
I've got the tools, right? So, and I grew up Christian, so I have no problem with faith, but with my brain injury, I just didn't have the capacity to do anything spiritual at the time.
What I think it was not somewhat totally forced on me as a child.
Okay.
Going to church and doing the right thing. And honestly, I had no interest in doing the right thing. If you gave me 3 options, I would pick the absolute worst thing I could do for myself and see what happened. And I think that's where that wasn't a particularly good mix for me.
Right.
And it's the foundation of the Betty Ford.
Okay, the 12-step program.
And I actually told, there was a Jesuit nun there that did counseling. And I can't remember how many days I had been there. And, she said, "How are you doing?" I said, I got to figure it out. I could do about 8, maybe 8 of those 12 steps. But 4 of those got to go.
Yeah.
And she said, "That's not how it works." I said, "I'm sober and I haven't left yet. So how it works for me might not be how it works for."
Yeah, and I've seen a lot. What's interesting, Jeb, is that after coming to, if they've written off 12-step, after coming to Smart Recovery, a lot of people give it a try again because they are training at SMART is to take what works and leave the rest, take the best and leave the rest. So people will actually have more because one of the tools is we have unconditional self-acceptance, unconditional other acceptance, and unconditional life acceptance. So when I practice acceptance of other people, and some people, when you come into a room and you feel at home, for some people, 12-step is everything for them.
Yep.
For some people, SMART is everything for them. All right. But at the end of the day, we promote you don't have to choose. And it's not one over the other. It's sort of what works. How's that working for you is what we like to ask people. Right.
Well, I found I had someone tell me after a 12-step meeting, he was going to be my sponsor and he'd put me in line and "You're doing your recovery wrong." And I said, "Well, I'm sober and I haven't hit you yet, so I think I'm ahead of the game."
You're ahead of the game.
But I just wondered, after I stepped back a little bit and thought, okay, well, violence was not a good reaction to that, but what's actually going wrong in his recovery that he feels he desperately needs to control me?
Well, I wouldn't say it's what they're taught at 12-step. Some people in 12-step, they need to be yelled at, screamed at, and that's where finding a sponsor can actually be like dating. You have to find one that works for you.
Right. Good match.
The relationship that's going to work for you. Because I know some people, they've come in and they've said, I needed somebody to call me on my crap and call me on my crap and make it real. And I thought that was pretty cool. But for me, it was more of I found a supportive gentleman, and he actually worked the 12 steps with me with some training, with some tools from that was Christian based. And so that was sort of my self-management, right? Because the 12 steps aren't a specific religion or anything else like that, but he had exercises and tools. I spent about 6 months clean. I started the steps, and then 18 months clean. I finished the steps, but I benefited from them as well too. So now, like I said, I've got both halves of my brain working towards recovery. And the executive decision making in my frontal lobe. I think what's really cool about recovery is that the brain will rewire itself.
Yes.
Develop new neural pathways. And that's what SMART training helps people do. Now, for me, it was SMART and everything else. For some people, it might be just 12-step. But at the end of the day, that's unconditional other acceptance. It's up to them.
Yeah, and you know what? I have people ask me, and I just say, whatever it takes.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had a doctor. I had put on quite a bit of weight, and I ate ice cream every night after I got sober.
Okay.
And the doctor told me, you should eat less ice cream, you'd lose weight. And I said, since I eat ice cream every night, I haven't had a drink. And he said, enjoy your ice cream.
Enjoy your ice cream.
Like, if that's what it takes, have at it. And that's sort of, and I'm actually thinking, I ended up seeing a psychiatrist when you talk about the brain starting to work and reconnect. I went to see a psychiatrist at ADAC, and I just told him, I said, I think I'm crazy. And he said, no, you're not. And he showed me all of how it worked or didn't work, parts of my brain. And one of the things was that I had no, like you talk about having the worksheet to go through.
Yeah.
I had no stop. I had no, and he said, I don't think if you understand this, but other people will think, I want to drink. And then they'll think, well, you know, then I'll have a couple and then I'll wake up, I don't feel good and I got to go to work and I have a big meeting, so I better not. And he said, you never get past, I want to drink.
Yeah.
Like there is no other, and I'd never thought about it. And I just, whatever I wanted and I got it.
Well, Robert Downey Jr. said, sometimes I think about having a drink with dinner, but then I remember I have plans at Christmas.
That's a great line.
And it's sort of like, wow. But we have a foundational tool that I like, Jeb, that I was teaching a lot of people when I was there, is the stop thought method. It's the stop thought method, which is urges come, whatever comes, and picture that stop sign, huge red and blaring, yell stop, scream stop, slam my fist, stop my foot, scream. I put everything about Curtis into a silly stop sign. I get a break from the craving. Because that's where that stop thought, it's like putting your finger in the hamster wheel. It just stopped that hamster wheel from spinning, right? So acknowledge the fact that whatever I'm feeling, do my stop thought, and then distraction is to put my mind somewhere positive, or at least neutral, right?
Right.
Because it's not always positive. But the biggest thing that I like about the program is acceptance. So if I move to a place of acceptance, there's that solar plexus poison. That's the resentment and that awful stuff. But if I move to a place of acceptance, the poison dissolves. For me, I had to turn things from opinions to facts. The opinion was my brother committing suicide was awful. It's sort of like, but now I can say my little brother committed suicide. I can talk about that without my stomach dropping to the floor.
Right.
Yeah, I know the acceptance as you move is, and it's not one thought, it's not one choice. It's sort of a place that I move towards. And as I enter that place of acceptance, then the poison dissolves, and stuff that's good or bad is now just a fact. You can't deny facts. The world is round. Gravity exists. No emotional response.
There is a COVID.
Yeah. There's no emotional response to that. Well, there's an emotional response to that. But the world is round, gravity exists, are just facts. There's no emotion connected to them. And if I can make my life a fact, it means I've moved to a place of acceptance, and I don't suffer anymore because of all the bad things that are happening in the world.
Yeah.
And it's quite an empowering place to be. Right?
How would you, if there's somebody out there that has lost, a family member recently, what would you say to them? How do you get through that? I mean, I've talked to a couple of people that lost partners through suicide, and then they were addicts, and that's kind of how they ended up coming to talk to me.
Right.
And the biggest thing to me was, if not your fault, it
Right.
had nothing to do with you.
Well, there we have the ABC method of problem solving, and when we di- we dispute the beliefs, not the event. So the event is that my brother committed suicide. With smart tools, can never change that.
Right.
But what we do, Jeb, is we work on, uh, we dispute the things, an activating event, beliefs about that event, which leads to consequences or emotions. And then we dispute the beliefs, which is where we dispute what we feel about an event.
Okay.
So, and that's where my stop thought came in really handy, because I would say, oh, you weren't there for him. Stop. You did the best you could. I should have known. Stop. You know what? His best friends in California didn't know. And so that's where that stop thought really came in handy. And I replaced those irrational thoughts that I could have done, coulda, woulda, shoulda, didda. And at the end of the day, at the end of the day, using my smart tools it's been, well, it'll be 4 years. It's been 4 years since he passed away, and but my poison's gone. It's still very sad,
Yeah.
but I don't suffer because of it.
Does it make it easier to remember the great parts of your brother?
Well, after doing my tools, I recognized something. I didn't really know my brother for the last 5 years of his life, because I didn't know he was suffering from PTSD. I thought he was just a drinker. I didn't know.
Okay.
I didn't know what goes on in a war, right?
So that was his mechanism.
And it's a massive mechanism for soldiers. And then I learned some stuff so I learned about war. I learned about combat and how disgusting it is and how gross it is. And so he did a few tours of duty, including Iraq. Now, what really kicked me in the solar plexus was he was a heavy equipment operator at the Marines.
Okay.
So because he was a sergeant, he'd gone up through the ranks, and so I thought, he's on the base, he's safe, he's not out there battling.
Yeah.
But the enemy goes down the side of the base and lobs IEDs in and provide like explosion devices.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so, yeah, mortar. Yeah. So they launch mortars into
Into the camp.
the camp. So you could have a mortar hit you in the head every day, at any time. And apparently one time a mortar had landed right beside of him, but it didn't explode.
Oh my God.
And that was kind of stressful for him. So,
Yeah.
and so I didn't realize how much stress it was just being on the base of the Marines.
Day in, day out.
Day in, day out. And then I found out that at the end, guess what his job was? Loading coffins into the plane to go home.
Oh God.
So he lost friends, and when I went to, my belief system was I just had it all wrong when it came to war and what Ryan was going through out there, and it was PTSD at the end of the day. He blacked out one night and made a bad decision. So it comes back to those decisions again, and I can't make really good decisions if I'm impaired.
Yeah.
Right, they're irrational.
Yeah, you're making irrational choices.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing too, is I don't ever tell myself that I can't do something, because I don't know about you, but I get my back up. Like,
Yeah.
don't tell me I can't
yeah.
do something, because I want to prove that I'm autonomous and I can make my own decisions, damn it. And it's, for most people in addiction and recovery, it's not until we put our hand on the stove that we realize it's hot.
Well, I can remember I would be okay for a little. I spent a year where I thought I wasn't sober 5 days.
Okay.
I make 5 days and then it's the play the movie forward. You know how it's going to end. But then I'd be there going, God damn it, what's wrong? Like, I'm not stupid. I know I'm not stupid. I did the dumbest thing I possibly could. How could I have done that?
Well, and it's not stupid, it's addictive. Because what the addiction does is we have a limbic system in our brain, which is the incentive reward program in our body. And what the addiction does is it places an irrational value on chemicals. Where that, without chemical, it basically makes using life or death in your head. Your brain is going to tell you that if you don't drink, it's as bad as dying. So that's where we put the irrational, value on something like a chemical to escape and stuff like that. But what I like to say, Lance, Jeb, is each time that you went out, you did some research.
Yeah.
Something clicks eventually.
Yeah.
And there we go, right? So it all starts off with 1 day at a time. So 5 days sober, and then a relapse. A relapse is entering the lifestyle again. A lapse is a temporary slip into old behaviors. But if after a lapse or a relapse, if I can learn something about what happened, then it's a tool.
Right.
It's not a mistake, right? And at the end of the day, I wasn't a hopeless mistake. I was just addicted.
Right.
And that chemicals. And for me, I've got my nicotine, I got my caffeine, and
Yeah.
I'm good with that today. People are like,
You know what? I've never smoked.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. I didn't see enough value in the action. You know?
Well, with me, I was probably at the age of 10. I was probably shoplifting, and I actually got arrested and stuff like that. And by the age of 12, I was stealing cigarettes. Around the age of 10, I was stealing cigarettes and shoplifting. At the age of 12, I was, quote, quote, mood altering every day.
Right.
Which is drugs, and I was smoking full time from the age of 12.
Wow.
So I don't know. It's irrational, but I used to love the smell of cigarettes when my aunt would be in the front car, my godparents, my grandma, and stuff smoking. I just sit there and just enjoy the smell of cigarettes. And I really couldn't wait to smoke. So I started my smoking path off early. I was stealing smokes at about 10, and then I was just, I was smoking. I don't smoke heavy. I go through 2 packs a week.
I was one of my visits to Renfrew.
Yeah.
And I ran into this one particular person there and at Lander, and he was a hardcore heroin addict, and he never shut up about not having cigarettes. And I thought, if you want cigarettes more, he didn't mention heroin once.
Right.
But it'd be okay if he could just have a cigarette.
Right.
And I kind of thought, kind of picking your evils, I didn't know why. Why throw somebody that's got this massive other problem and going, oh, and you can't smoke.
And you can't. Well,
it would have been coffee for me. I would have gone nuts without coffee.
With the executive director of Fresh Start Treatment Center, he's my mentor actually, but we recognize one thing, and that's harm reduction saves lives, because they don't die, and if somebody dies, they can't choose recovery. So what the harm reduction is going to give them the ability to do could be sort of a stage in their recovery. But at the end of the day, it's very sad that there are some people who are just going to die. So what it does is it gives them dignity, right? There's a treatment center out in Ontario, I do believe, where they give measured alcohol to people living in the center,
right,
on a regular basis, like a few times a day.
Maintenance.
It's measured. It's not rubbing alcohol. It's not hand sanitizer. They're not crapping themselves.
Yeah.
They're living a semi-normal life. But the harm reduction, it does save lives.
Yeah. You know, the Jesuit nun that was at Betty Ford when I was there, and she was there temporarily. She was actually from Minnesota, and it was the changeover from when it became Hazelton, Betty Ford. Hazelton's big in Minnesota. And she was telling me they run what they call as a wet program. And they take people that are terminal, but they're on the street. They give them a place to live, and they do the same thing. They mark and measure and keep them at a maintenance level so that they're not getting ill, and give them dignity because they're dying.
They're going to die.
So they, and she said, you know, they're not dying behind a dumpster, or you give them some sort of dignity for the end of their life.
Well, here in Calgary, we had the safe injection sites.
Yes.
And there's a lot of debate about that. But at the end of the day, to give them a clean room, clean water, fresh needles, and at the end of the day, what it does is it decreases Hep C, decreases AIDS or HIV. It actually decreases a lot of these things that happen because they're not injecting themselves with dirty puddle water.
Yeah.
And it gives them the ability to have some dignity, right?
You know what I'd like to see, and I've thought this for a long time, if the more people you help with their addiction issues, the less you're going to see them in hospital.
Oh, absolutely. I had a police officer living down the street from me in Midport, and he said 80 to 90% of his calls for domestic disputes,
right,
there's chemicals involved. There's addiction involved.
Yeah.
And he said if we can deal with the addiction, but at the end of the day, that whole war on drugs and just say no and stuff like that was, I don't believe it's rational.
Well, now every leader needs an enemy.
Yeah. To
lead, you know. That's where I think that mentality came from. Well, I need a war, or it can't be a war hero. Well, so if I have a war on drugs and I can stop, and like, seriously, I don't know whose joke it is, but he said, you know, everybody says, well, we made it to the moon, but nobody's made it to Mars. And he said, here's how you get to Mars. You take all the drugs, you put them on a big spaceship, and you shoot them up to Mars. And you tell addicts, there's free drugs on Mars. We'll be there in 2 years.
We'll be there in 2 years, yeah.
You know, free drugs.
Yeah.
All I got to do is get to Mars. And it's that can-do attitude. But I always found, and I went to the hospital more often than I should have, and I found most of the doctors don't know jack shit about addiction.
Oh, they don't. There's zero compassion a lot of these emergency rooms as well, where it's sort of, it's like, oh, you're addicted, write you off, send you out the door. Yeah. And they're like, we don't do that here. And it's just sort of like, man, I'm dying. And like I had a lady that I was dating, and she fell, split her lip, broke her neck, and she was getting all this really good service at the hospital till her blood alcohol came back. And then they just dumped her.
Oh, my God.
They just said, well, it's time for you to go.
Well, you know, it's funny. I had I'm subject to seizures. I haven't had many. I mean, I know what to do to not have them now. But even when I was stone cold sober, I had worked too much. I wasn't eating right. I got really tired, and it stacks up, and then your ability to fight the seizure off is gone. So they put me in an ambulance, and he goes, okay, they're open at Rocky View. And the other guy goes, look at his chart, and took me straight to Sheldon Schumer. And when I got there, the doctor said, how much have you had to drink? I said, I haven't had a drink in like 2 years. And he goes, well, you know, we're going to run blood work. You might as well just tell me. And then, you know, when was the last time you did cocaine? I said, it's been a long time. He said, what, like noon, 11 o'clock? Like what time? I said, like 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
He goes, I don't believe you. And the blood work came back, and he was still shitty to me.
Addicts are, there's a lot of, there's a whole big connotation where the addicts is a moral deficiency.
Right.
When at the end of the day, it's a miswired, improperly wired brain. Our limbic system has been hijacked. But people think that it's a moral failure to be addicted.
Yeah.
And that's one of the hard things about. And what I started doing, Jeb, in January 2006, I just started knocking on doors to grow the SMART program and let them know that,
there was a program.
We're good people, right?
Yeah.
And I do know that some people, yeah. So that's what I started doing in January 2006, was just sort of knocking on doors, getting the word out about recovery. That recovery is cool. And there's actually a group called the Faces and Voices of Recovery, and they have a chapter.
A book out?
It's a group, but it's the Faces and Voices of Recovery Canada would be the one here in Canada.
Oh, okay.
But what their program is to change the whole perception of society when it views addiction. So what they do is they've got people like Robert Downey Jr. and other people who might be influential to stand up and say, I'm in recovery and it's cool. So
yeah.
My dream ultimately would be, I say, I've battled addiction, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry. Right? They pity on me. But at the end of the day, with the Faces and Voices of Recovery, if we get 100% success, will be that I'm in recovery and people are going to say, great.
Yeah.
Right? That's awesome. Good for you. Not, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. It's when you talk about the doctors being so negative, there were 3 doctors there. One of them was my roommate. And it was just so funny because it's like, I said to my roommate, I said, you guys treat us like shit when we show up at the hospital. He goes, I show up at the hospital, they treat me like shit.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's just amazing to me. And they brought a group of interns in that were getting ready to graduate. And they kind of paired us up to be interviewed by them. And this one really young guy, I mean, they all look like they were 14 to me. And he said, I've been talking to like 4 or 5 of you guys. You're like really successful guys. Like you've had like careers and some of them are millionaires. And I said, yeah, high functioning addicts.
Right.
2 pilots, a judge.
Yeah.
A couple of lawyers. And it's like, these are not idiots. And I wonder how many of the when you go into an emergency as an addict and you get treated like shit by a doctor, and then he's worked 14 hours and to go to sleep, he slams back a half a bottle of something to get to sleep.
Right.
And still is able to look down on the addict. But I truly believe you always hate in others the thing you hate the worst about yourself.
I think that's very true. One of the things that I would condemn and crucify people who have the character defects that I have.
Yes.
If I have a character defect, for example, that I'm having a really tough time dealing with, when I see other people with that, I crucify them because they shouldn't do that. Right? So it's a big judgment thing, and it's crazy. It's sort of like, wow.
Well, it's a rationalizing, and mine was always, I'm saying the same thing that you're saying. I always had a very strict set of rules that I thought people should live their life by.
Right.
But I was fully willing to forgive myself for not following them. Nobody else, but I forgive me.
Yeah, that it'll come back to shoulds again, right? You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't drink so much. You shouldn't. But at the end of the day, I'm killing myself, right? At the end of the day. And at the end of the day, Jeb, with the doctors, they get no training in school. They
Yeah.
they are trained. A doctor is trained to treat symptoms, and the best way to treat addiction is to stop using. But they don't give them any training and tools or anything
Yeah.
like that. So, over my many years running Smart, I would have I would go to the foothills and I would talk to some doctors, and I did some training for them about addiction. And I said, you guys are going to be experts on addiction with the psychology and stuff like that, but it's recovery is the answer.
Right.
Right? It'll be the different solutions that people have. But at the end of the day, addiction's a bitch.
Yeah.
And that's, and it's just nasty. And I don't know, like for me in my recovery, I've always wanted to know what's too much, how much is too much. And so I was drinking coffee and I drank like 4 pots one day and had a seizure. So I figured out that, yeah, you can have too much coffee, right? And then later on in my recovery, I was going through an anxious time and I was drinking water compulsively. And I've actually, I had this awful idea that how much water can you drink in a day and how long can you hold it? And I actually damaged my bladder. And
wow.
I'm recovering from that today. But I was just like, wow, it's just water.
How could it hurt me?
How could it hurt me? But I always needed to know how much is too much. But I answered that question, and now I don't do that.
I've got a friend that's a comedian, and he says somebody asked him, and very successful comedian, and who shall remain nameless, but he said somebody asked him, they said, I can't even tell when you're fucked up. And he said, if I'm standing up, I'm fucked up. If I'm lying down, I'm too fucked up. And it was kind of his game, and it was like, I've always found that addicts laugh at things other people find like
Mortifying.
And I had a woman come up to me after a show, and a lot in my club show now involves the path that I've gone through.
Right.
And you know what? There's some really stupid, funny shit that I've done.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, I had a woman come up after, and she said, you're so funny, but it's so sad, your life. I was like, it's better now.
It's better now.
You know, that's kind of the point. Like, I think you're kind of missing the point, but
right.
It's better now, and the point is, holy shit, if I can pull this off,
yeah,
anybody.
And at the end of the day, it's sort of to be able to look back on the past with a light heart, and that's what I found for a lot of people. It's like forgiveness of myself, that I was just addicted. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't irrational. Or yeah. I was irrational, but I wasn't stupid, right? I was just addicted. And that's how I dealt with life, right? So to be able to look back on your life, and one of the things after the loss of my brother in 2017, I went to the Smart Recovery International Conference, and I talked to a psychologist there, and she said, well, Curtis, you're in recovery. Your brother's loss is now part of your story. So write your story. And I was taught in recovery to write my obituary on a regular basis. What do you want it to say? So I thought, okay, Curtis battled addiction, hit bottom, got 12 years clean. His brother committed suicide, and he relapsed and died. And I thought, that's not a very good story.
No.
So let's make it a better story, that I survived through this, and I have, right? So to be able to look back on our lives as almost as a story, and what I like to do is, today, of course, is awesome, but I like to sort of play the tape. And when I play the tape, I want it to be, how do I want the story to end? I want the story to end is that I died clean.
Right.
Right? That's the answer for me. Is that when it's time, I just want to go out clean. Because the death of like a person, you can have an emotional, almost a spiritual death that'll come from going back to using. And it's just like, I just want to go out clean.
Right.
That's my hope, right? And if I could help some people along the way. But I did have a big ego thing going on, that I was going to be the executive director and I was going to get a big salary. But I'll let you know is early on in recovery, I was writing checks with my mouth that my ass can't cash.
Yeah.
At one point in the future, if you are the executive director of a registered charity, you're going to need to put 50 hours a week in. You're going to need to do this, and you're going to have to live up to the salary. And in the back of my head, my denial was, I'll figure it out then.
Because you're a smart guy.
Yeah, I'll figure it out then.
But I think we're excellent. Well, I know we're excellent bullshit artists, and we can convince almost anyone of anything.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of addicts do operate on that ideal that I'll worry about that problem when I hit it. Like, I got a big problem right in front of me right now. I'm going to solve that. And then if I hit that one, I'll worry about that one then. I'm not going to get ready for it.
Right. Like my psychologist has recognized when we talk about, some people have the ability to walk in the addicted world and out, and some people just don't.
Right.
Right. So, so for example, a family member of mine just stays away from cocaine because he knows he doesn't like the 3-day hangover. And I said, well, we don't think about the 3-day hangover. We think about the high. And that's why
Oh, yeah.
at the end of the day, if you don't stop using, you never come
Have
down.
a hangover.
Right. So, and my brother was like, wow. And his psychologist was saying that anybody can become addicted, but I don't think so. I think that it's actually the limbic system, our incentive reward system as we're growing up gets hijacked,
right.
If we put something on it. And it's usually when I need something external to deal with what's going on internally.
Right.
Right? If I can't deal with internal, that's what the Smart Recovery program does. It gives me some tools to deal with what's going on inside without using chemicals. There's a question. It says, if drugs were the answer, what the heck was the question?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's to deal with those emotions and that negativity, that at the end of the day, if I can use something to deal with that, but that's what recovery gives us, is the ability to deal with life. What do they say in some programs? Life in life's terms. And shit happens, don't use, is what I was taught early on. And I'm like, that's pretty negative.
Shit happens till you use?
No, shit happens, don't use.
Don't use, yeah. Well, it does. I think you're right. We just handle things differently.
Yeah.
I was on one particularly nasty binge, and my wife at the time, now ex-wife, she said, "Can you just not get your head out of a bottle?" And I said, "No." Simple. Obviously not.
Obviously not.
But what's always amazed me is when you first, you've been a long time. I've been a pretty good while. And my thought process works so much better now. But in that first stretch, when you're trying to get sober, your brain is, it's sabotaging you at every turn. And it's so much harder to talk yourself out of it.
Oh, absolutely. And that's, for example, one of the things early on in recovery is romancing the addiction. To think it was so good. And all we think about is the good times. We never think about the bottom. We never think about hitting bottom. But at the end of the day, at the end of the day, what it does is by staying clean, because that is a foundation for rewiring your brain, is sustained clean time. So with sustained clean time, you go through life issues that are very difficult, and your brain will rewire itself. And over 16 years, I think I've got a new wired brain and everything else going on up there because I don't think of using. And at the end of the day, if we did think of using, it's just a thought.
Yeah.
That's smart. We say the thought is the craving and the urge is that solar plexus poison. So, early on, how did I deal with my cravings? I did a stop thought and I said, you've got to run smart. Like 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, I'd wake up, and if I had a craving, I thought, dude, no, you got to answer the phone. So
right.
every waking hour for the next 13 years, and I thought, no, I can't relapse because I'm not going to go to the room of smart and tell them that I relapse when I'm trying to teach them how to get clean.
Yeah.
Right?
You know what, I've seen people say they had 32 years and went back out.
I think it comes down to not doing my 30 minutes to 3 hours a day.
Right.
Which is the daily maintenance. A perfect analogy is diabetes. Diabetics take insulin every day. And for me, I give myself a little bit of recovery. Now, I'll let you know is that, dude, first 10 years, 2015 was rocking. I was growing smart and everything was going really good, but I was doing that 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. 11 years clean, I started to burn out physically, mentally, spiritually. 12 years clean, I lost my brother. I was dealing with that through my 13th year clean. What was it? I guess it would be 14 years clean. I lost my job. And then 15 years clean, you know. But over that time, from after 10 years where it was really good, it started to slide, is over those 5 years, I actually did hit an emotional, I hit bottom in October of last year.
Wow.
And, but it was from me not doing my 30 minutes to 3 hours a day. All I had was...
Your exercise.
Yeah, my exercise. All I had was one meeting a week. And when I went there, since I was the GSR, the church connection, the treasurer, I was everything at that group. When I went to that meeting on Saturday night, I wasn't there for recovery. I was there to run the meeting.
Yeah.
So over a period of time, I was getting no meetings. And
so you weren't participating.
No, I was at the meeting physically, but I wasn't there mentally.
All right.
So that's where, like, I figured out now is that one meeting a week isn't enough for me. We have a meeting every other Tuesday at work, which is a team meeting, which is cool. I do the family and friends meeting on Wednesday, which is about 3 hours, and it's intense, like emotional and stuff. But it's like paying attention for 3 straight hours.
Yeah, pretty intense.
So it gets me. And then on Thursday night, I do some tool training with the alumni. And then on Saturday, I go to my Narcotics Anonymous meeting, and I step back from all of my servers positions.
Right.
So now I'm actually there as a member. And my job, when I go to the different rooms of recovery, is to share a message of recovery. Right?
Right.
I don't talk about my using. I talk about my recovery. And if I can go and take a topic, say from the NA program, like forgiveness or something like that, and I can apply that to recovery, but I got 3.5 days a week now is what I do for my recovery as well. And I have a lot of gratitude for the family and friends that are doing the best they can to support their loved ones, right? Because it does gives them training too about how to interact with addiction, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we're not bad people, just addicted, and we can change that.
Yeah, I've had parents of addicted people that they just say, "Tell us what to do. We don't know what to do," and I just said, I don't know them well enough.
Smart Recovery Family and Friends Program. It's based on community reinforcement and family training craft. There's a book, Get Your Loved Ones Sober, which our handbook is based off of. But at the end of the day, there's tools and training, language.
For the families.
For the families. And I get so many people at my Wednesday night meeting, Jeb, that say, you know, like one of the gentlemen went through the yellow pages back, and he just wanted to find somebody to help him deal with his son's addiction.
Right.
And every time he called somewhere, like crisis line or something, they'd say, "Is your son safe?"
Yeah.
He was like, "I'm calling for me." And now with the Family and Friends program, we've got an opportunity for them to recover and grow too. And in the
same book training, pragmatic, follow this. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
And
I don't know if it was there when I was.
No, it's a little newer in recovery. Like I know that it's been the past maybe 3 to 5 years that it was based on that book, Get Your Loved Ones Sober. They took the Smart Recovery program and gave tools and training to family members. And I've seen, it's amazing because working with the family and friends, I did my first meeting in February, and I've got some people who are still attending the program today, and it's just dramatic. Why do I keep doing what I'm doing, Jeb? Is because when I do a presentation at a detox center and a person thinks they're a hopeless addict and they're going to die, that light bulb comes on over their head, and they think, I can do this. That's what keeps me going. And the family and friends facilitation that I'm doing, 1 hour turned into an hour and a half, but now we're up to a 3-hour meeting because it's a treatment center meeting. It's not a standard SMART meeting.
Okay.
Standard SMART meetings are an hour and a half.
Right.
But at the end of the day, to see the recovery that's happened, to see somebody come in, anxiety, bouncing off the walls, stressed, sad, and then to see them 10 months later, they're like this, it's okay. Because a lot of people, Jeb, are going to say, for family and friends is waiting for the shoe to drop. When's the other shoe going to drop?
Yeah.
What's cool is that after some family and friends training, if the shoe drops, that's okay. We got tools for that.
Right. So you're not living in fear of the other shoe dropping.
If it happens.
Which is how I think my family was around me.
Oh, and it's in or out. But if there's lapses or relapses, and the stages of change by DiClemente and Prochaska has a lapse, which is a temporary slip into old behaviors, can happen at any time during the growth of contemplation action. Because if I'm driving to Edmonton and I make it to Airdrie and have a flat tire, I fix the flat tire and I go on to Edmonton. I don't come back to Calgary and start my trip again.
Right. Oh, okay. That's a good analogy.
And for some people, that might be an issue they might have, which is back to step one, back to step one, back to step one. Well, at Smart Recovery, we recognize, that clean time is the recovery we do. We don't lose by doing so. And I don't use the term relapse anymore. I use the term research. So,
yeah. You know what I always told people? I learned far more from my issues by relapsing than I ever did by being sober.
Well, and
because the sober time, I spent all that time just trying to stay sober. And then I got to where, and I think SMART helped me a lot with this. If I relapsed, I would go, okay, what happened? What was going on?
Absolutely. What's the trigger?
Yeah, and that was one of the things that we did. We wrote down, okay, how do you know you're getting ready to? And it's like, okay, I stopped cleaning my car. I stopped getting up at the same time. I stopped eating. I stopped. And then it's like, all right, you're on your way.
Yeah. And that's what we gain the ability to stop that process. When a lot of it, for me, honestly comes from the stop thought from Smart Recovery, which is that hamster wheel starts spinning, and instead of just stressing about it, I just do a stop thought, put my finger in there, use my SMART tools, and change what I'm thinking. Because thinking leads to emotions, emotions lead to behavior. So what we do is change our thinking. But our thinking is all based on our belief systems. And the SMART program helps people. At the end of the day, we don't tell people they have to stop using it SMART. I like to try and get them to work through the handbook, and by the end of the handbook, they make a better decision about their addiction.
Right.
Right.
So, and you said that you're doing online right now. So, where do people go to find you?
We have www.smartrecoveryalberta.org. We have all of our Calgary meetings there. There's all the meetings in Alberta that are online. Some meetings are back to face, but all of the meetings will be, you can find out all the information at smartrecoveryalberta.org. And then there's also a website, just plain old www.smartrecovery.org. And what I love about that website, it's a worldwide website, Jeb, and which means there's people in Australia on it. So 4 a.m. here is their afternoon. So if you're ever struggling in the middle of the night, you could just go online and say, I'm struggling, and you're going to have people helping you.
Wow.
Right? So that's the smartrecovery.org. Is those 24-hour chat rooms as well, right?
It has grown massively since the last time I was there.
I came into the program in 95, and SMART was just getting, 2005. And I think SMART first came to Calgary in 1999. And it's a relatively new program.
Right.
Or a newer program. And one of the things that, like, as science progresses, as knowledge of recovery progresses, as knowledge of addiction progresses, we have new handbooks.
Right.
So we're actually on our 3rd handbook.
Okay.
Yeah, there was like I think it was a 99 edition, a 2004 edition, and I've got it in my bag, but 2012 edition. But no, yeah, either way. But we're on our 3rd handbook.
Nice.
And so as the knowledge and the understanding of recovery, because that's what I like to say is I don't study addiction, I study recovery. When I was studying addiction, I was out there getting loaded. That was my training for addiction.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, as recovery, knowledge about recovery grows and the whole limbic system and all that other stuff, we're going to have new handbooks that are going to come out. And we're always going to have the latest
adjustments.
The latest scientific knowledge for what's going on, right?
Learn about yourself.
Yeah. The unconditional self-acceptance is huge because a lot of time, I don't accept myself. So if I can accept myself, I can accept other people. But most of all, I can accept life today. Or my life acceptance is where I've taken the thing about this awful, horrible fact of my little brother committing suicide, and I've turned it into a fact. And I said, my little brother, and that's where I can talk to people now and say that. Because I used to feel guilty when I shared that with people. I'd feel guilty.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's just a fact. But at the end of the day, it still sucks.
Yes. From the people I've talked to, it's... like I say, I tell them you could not have stopped this. Well, when a person is determined to do that, they get it done.
Well, and my brother, what I shared about not knowing my brother for the past 5 years of his life is that I was in recovery. He respected my recovery, but he was drinking every day. So I just didn't connect with him very often. I was completely disconnected, and I was waiting. Honestly, the sad thing is that I was waiting for the day that he was going to choose recovery, and he was going to get sober, and we were going to be best friends till the day we die. Didn't quite work out that way. At the end of the day, I didn't know him for the past 5 years of his life. And with my brain injury and stuff, I don't remember a lot about, But at the end of the day, And that's a sad thing, because he actually phone, when you get a red arrow on your phone when you miss a phone call?
Yeah.
Well, I had 2 missed calls from Ryan, my recovery week of 12 years. I had a text from him on the 20th of May, happy anniversary, Kurt. And all I did was text back, thanks, Ryan. I never got back to him. And then he actually committed suicide right after that. So that was one of the toughest things. But the cool thing was that I didn't think of using.
Right.
Because of my training that I had done, what came into my head when I got that news? This is going to hurt. But I braced for it and I prepared. I felt prepared for it, and I dealt with it. It took 4 years to get rid of to move into a place of acceptance, but I finally did. And it's just amazing. Me with my addiction, my first thought was, this is going to hurt. My brother, who's not addicted, his first thought was, that little boy needs a dad. Right? So the self-centered nature of things, right?
Right.
Like, my first thought was, this is going to hurt. I need to survive. I'm going to I didn't need, this is going to hurt. And I braced for it. And I went forward like that. But what my brother had said is, that little boy needs a dad. He thought about Preston at the end. But my first thought was survival.
Right.
So just different people, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what? Thanks so much for coming and sharing all of that. And like you say, online, smartrecovery.org. You can find a meeting anywhere. And
well, smartrecovery.org has all the worldwide. It's a worldwide website, right. But smartrecoveryalberta.org. And I'll get one plug in, is that it is about time when people start making donations. So we have a donate now button.
Oh, okay.
At smartrecovery.org, and you get a CRA tax receipt now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you're an official not-for-profit.
That was my whole thing, was that if we become a registered charity, people can get.
And it makes them more inclined.
Well, and some people they won't donate if there's no tax receipt.
Right.
But there are certain people. Originally I was like, well, people need to make donations each year, so let's try and put them here.
Right.
So there's a donate now button at smartrecoveryalberta.org, and when you donate there, the money stays in Alberta.
Okay. I'm going to pop out with an idea. If you're out there and you're thinking about donating, why not donate once a year on your sobriety anniversary?
Yes. Yeah.
That way you won't forget.
Then you don't forget.
Although I had to pick Easter because, to be brutally honest, I don't remember I know I was at Betty Ford, and I haven't used since then, and I was there at Easter.
There you go.
So I have a 30-day sobriety date.
Yeah. I
have an open window.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, you know what? We need to have that coffee.
Yes.
And, once again, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
And all the information you can find. Once again, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Sober Not Sane. Subscribe and watch, listen, like, share on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast. And once again, big thanks to Liz at the camera store for helping us out with the equipment. Curtis, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeb.